Welcome to the Get Tailored podcast. Join us as we explore insightful conversations on professional organizing, tackling both internal and external chaos, and discovering the transformative power of clarity and purpose in every aspect of life. If you're loving what you hear, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share our channel. Hey there, welcome back to Get Tailored podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Taylor, and I'm super excited to introduce you today to Rich Milburn from Klaus Team Real Estate Solutions. Thank you, Rich, for joining me today.
Anytime.
Yeah, so I'm super excited to get you on here. There's a lot of correlations between professional organization and selling and buying homes. I mean, there's so many different ways people have to stay on top of things to get things moving, and
agreed.
Wanted to kind of tap into that a little bit with you as far as those similarities in our different things. So
I've always, my phrase that I always use is buying and selling a home is not like trying to buy a can of corn.
Yeah.
You have to kind of prep and understand what you can do, and
yeah,
we have to get over some of our own speed bumps, if you will, on how to do it right and get ready and what to expect and go that route.
Yeah, exactly. So what would you say would be one of the, I guess, biggest factors, if you will, when it comes to preparing for something like this? Maybe for first-time homeowners?
First-time home buyers is a great place to start. We live in a crazy world. Crazy world of, we're hit with media, we're hit with, advertisements, all the fancy stuff, all the beautiful stuff in the world. And we are a generation, if you will, or a time where emotional buying. So how we start prepping and living our life and the habits that we create to make sure that we're in that place to make that home purchase, avoiding debt is a big thing. It's so easy. I had a friend yesterday telling me that his 18-year-old daughter, who's I think is 18, is a swim coach, doesn't make hardly any money, is getting credit card offers for $20,000.
Yes.
It makes it so easy.
Yeah.
Well, then all of a sudden this starts to build up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and we can get into that more in a few minutes, but I have lenders that I work with, and everybody, you hear this all the time from what the media says is, I can't afford to buy a home. I'll never be able to afford a home, and they give up. Mm-hmm. So then they do bad habits because they didn't have a goal on that. Well, the habits, you don't have to make hundreds of thousands of dollars and that type of stuff to own a home. But if you sit down, let's just say, as we're not buying a can of corn, that if you're by yourself, you have a spouse, you're starting a new family, and saying, okay, what do we need to do to be able to own a home?
Yeah. And
you sit down, let's just say with a lender, okay? And a lender you sit down with doesn't mean you're going to buy a home right then and there. It means, okay, I'm going to sit down, that lender is going to say, okay, with your income and how you want to live your life reasonably, I can reasonably get you into a house of this price.
Yeah.
Okay? But you have to stay away from consumer debt. Don't go out and buying, do you know the average car payment now is almost $800 a month for a new car?
That's crazy.
All right?
Yeah.
Who needs that? You don't. You got to get away from that, having that.
Yeah.
But they sit down and say, okay, with your income, we can do this.
Yeah.
And it may not be that $500,000 or $600,000 home, but it might be $300,000 to $350,000, and you start there.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering, what is the average cost of living percentage when it comes to consumerism? Because I feel like that's like a huge piece of our debt, like debt to income ratio, and then when that comes to getting, if you want to buy a home, of course to go into it seamlessly, you can't have debt, right?
Well,
so
yeah, I believe, and I'm not a lender, so I don't know all the lending guidelines, but I think you're in that, your house, you got to be in that 32% debt to income ratio for your home, and that's with everything.
Yeah.
So these credit cards and that impulse buying that we do, and we're all guilty of it. Amazon.
Well, let me tell you, after COVID, I mean, I've seen this through working with other clients with organizing and even just downsizing people to move. A big thing that I've seen, I went into someone's home last year, and she had cardboard boxes, just cluttering her entire front room. We couldn't even walk into this room. Yeah. And she said, well, I have an Amazon problem.
Yeah, well, it's so easy and people get bored.
Yeah.
Well, I joke with my wife all the time. I said, why does Amazon have your picture on the back door of the truck? You know, are you that much of a, because I come home and there's boxes there all the time.
Every day. Yeah.
But, you know, it's our own habits. And we briefly, as we were coming into this, we were talking about the book Atomic Habit, which everybody raves about.
Yeah. And
it's a straightforward, not a punch in the gut, but it's a realization of your habits and how you want to do things, you know, and this atmosphere that has been trying to be created in our own world of having to have all this in a bag of chips is not real.
Yeah.
And the people who look like that they have it all, probably 90% of them are living paycheck to paycheck and are one minor disaster away from losing it. And unfortunately, been there myself.
Yeah. Same.
You know, so, you know, the other thing that we were talking about is setting goals.
Yeah.
Okay, if you want to buy a house, find out what it takes. Don't assume you know. And, you know, right now we get the pushback is I'm comfortable renting.
Well, then sometimes people feel like they're not, you know, they don't have what it takes to buy a home. They don't feel like they're organized enough or they have enough money. Like they always think this grandiose idea of buying a home that it's out of their reach. So you would have a meeting with them to sit down and say, okay, let's look at everything. Let's put all your cards on the table and kind of see where you are, because half the time, I mean, when it comes to really being organized in your finances, in your schedule, and you're planning everything, I mean, that's hard for anyone.
Well, you know. Well, people get some, I don't want to say it across the board, but a lot of people that I've talked to have this preconceived notion that, oh, you have to have all this money down. You have to have this. You have to have that.
Yeah.
Okay. In some perfect worlds, maybe.
Okay.
But there's alternatives. But you can listen to everybody that you want to give you the answer that you can't do it, or you can literally sit down with somebody who can tell you, this is what you need to do it, and then set up that plan, set up your budget.
Yeah.
What is your budget? How often are you going out to eat? I mean, if you break it down on the, I'm bad at it. I mean, my wife and I don't always want to cook, or hardly ever, and it's I feel like this tonight or whatever. Yeah. And all of a sudden at the end of the month, you look at how much you spent, and it's like, holy cow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my boyfriend and I were just talking about that the other day, where it was like, man, we tallied up how much we spent just going out to eat, and it's just in the upwards of thousands.
It is.
And it's crazy how easy.
It's
like, oh, let's just go out tonight, or let's go grab a beer with dinner or whatever.
And how many do one beer?
Oh, and how much is a beer nowadays?
It's
like
what, $10?
$10, and then you get 2 or 3. Then before you know it, you're.
It just compiles. It does, and we get comfortable with that.
Yeah.
So, my goal with, you talk about organizing, and a lot of times with what you do, it's all about possessions.
Yes, absolutely.
So there's organizations and organizing yourself outside of the possessions. It's organizing your thoughts, your habits. And even some simple things like this is a little bit off real estate, but I deal a lot with seniors. But it's not just seniors. Everybody thinks, well, I have to have, when they think of estate, that they have to have this mass amount of money to have a trust in place.
Yeah.
But a trust may just determine who's taking care of your financials, your medical, and any other decision making, your power of his attorney. So if something was to happen to you, and you're incapacitated, okay, you're young, you may or may not have a lot of assets, but who's going to write the checks to pay your bills if nobody has permission to do that from a power of attorney for your finances? Right. Those little things, the more stuff that you get taken care of in that little stuff feels as great as when you open that pantry and goes, I can see it. I can see where everything's at.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing from prepping to buy a home to getting your affairs in place to getting your home in place. Every little bit helps.
So would you say that there's some kind of format of these type of things that people need to do in a certain type of format, or?
I honestly think that the format I would start with is sitting down at home with your significant other and saying, okay, establish goals, okay? And buying a home. We'd love to buy a home. Well, the instant response is, well, we don't have the money. Or do you? Okay, you're getting together. People want to go rent. Okay, let's talk about rent. Well, to get into a rental, you're going to have to pay. The average rent right now in Maricopa County is $2,000.
Yep.
Okay, so you have a first month's payment, you have your security deposit, and then your next month's payment. You're $6,000 right there.
Sure.
Well, if you're working to wanting to buy a home, excuse me, and you want to get this home, well, that's a huge chunk of it's a percentage of your home price if you're going in the reality of what you can respectfully afford.
Yeah.
And boom, there it is. Now I'm putting money away to get the home. And then what people don't understand is, well, I'm still spending the same amount of money. Well, maybe you're spending the same amount of money at $2,000 a month, or maybe a couple hundred more in that variation, whatever.
Yeah.
But every year that house goes up. And yes, we have a little fluctuations in the market. But if you look at a graph over the past 30 years, that line of value continues to go up. And so do incomes and everything else. But it's how we discipline ourselves to make that purchase. So you have that, to finish your question, you have that conversation of, okay, what we want to do, and what's our budget? So here's what we make, here's what our bills are. If we have some consumer debt, or we have the credit cards, or whatever it may be, we got to get that out of the way. And we don't use them again unless, emergencies, and I'm not telling you to go live your life like don't do anything.
Yeah.
But you got to be reasonable. And don't go out and buy the $80,000 vehicle that the vehicle you have is working just because you want something else, and you rack that payment up. Well, I make that money. Well, yeah, but you could be putting it here, and then as you grow, that home that you just bought, for let's just say your starter home, and I looked this morning before we came here today, there's a lot of homes on the market for under $350,000. Are they the grand Camelback Mountain home? No, but nobody starts there.
Yeah.
You got to build to it.
I'm almost wondering if society puts on this pressure to keeping up with the Joneses. That's probably way overused as far as that, but that probably you see that a lot in first home, like people who want to buy their first home, and they come to you and they're like, well, we want the mansion on the hill, and then you have to, okay, reality is this is where you can find yourself. So how do you work with that?
Well, once you break it down, like I had some clients recently that moved here from out of state, and the husband was retiring or was going to come moving here without a job. So their comfort level of where they could be payment-wise was their driving force. All right? So they had the area of town that they wanted to be in, and I knew the homes in that area and what would fit their payment. So I did some research outside of the box. Now, again, they prepped. They did not have the big consumer debt. They had the credit in line. They were ready to do some stuff. And because of some new builder incentives, instead of a home that was 15, 20 years old that needed some stuff here and there, any home would, I was able to get them into a brand new home.
Nice. 2,000
square foot, 3-car garage at less of a payment because the incentives that are there. But they asked the questions and did the research versus assuming they knew the answer. Because there's so much more out there than there's ways to do things. We all started somewhere.
Yeah,
everybody.
Sure. Yeah.
So you have to realize you start and you move that way.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a couple, more of a personal question. What is your favorite thing about working in this real estate market, and types of clients and people that you come across?
Well, my wife and I really, really cater to seniors. I'm retired law enforcement. She's retired from the adult communities, the independent, assisted, and memory care living. And seeing the victimization of seniors and the growth of technology and all the stuff that when they were young and in their prime was pretty much simple done with a handshake, that none of that's done anymore.
Yeah.
And you and I have met over helping some seniors, and the difference that we were able to bring to their lives and get them to where they needed to go. One was a transition to senior living. The other was a different living arrangement from a 3-story beautiful condo to a 1-story home. And you had your work cut out for you.
Oh, yeah. That was fun.
Oh yeah, especially the first one when you were out in the summer heat in that garage.
Oh yeah.
That was.
Never forget those type of
I didn't mind
jobs.
calling you on the phone. Hey, Nikki, how's it going? Oh, I'm fine. Okay, I'm good.
I'm still here.
I don't need to be out there, right?
Drink lots of water. It's hot out.
But I mean, but also helping any client not knowing that they could get a house and seeing their face when they got it.
Yeah.
And it's like, great, because
those moments are priceless.
It is. And, there's a lot of people that think that real estate is this high money, you make all this money and all that type of stuff. You can make very good money in real estate, but you never know when your check is coming.
True.
Right? And you have to be ready for life. And then I've really learned, especially I'm surrounded with some great people. I work for Kenny Klaus, who's amazing leader in what he does and how he teaches to work with building relationships with your clients. It's not just a closing.
I want to tap into that for a few minutes. So for me, when I'm working with clients and like my first, impression, if you will, entering into a new home, especially when it comes to a move, it's so overwhelming for clients. Like you come in and they're like, okay, I'm moving, I'm buying this house or I'm selling this house. And there's just so many little tiny things that they're just so overwhelmed. They can't keep track. And, I want to kind of go back to what you were saying before about staying organized in your mind and like how, and I see that when I help with clients, I really help kind of, bridge the gap between all those questions that they have or all these, obstacles, if you will, when it comes to a large project like that. So like, how do you help your clients in the same kind of capacity, but more on the real estate side?
I break it down. You sit down and say, okay, step by step, this is how things will go.
Yeah.
If I'm going to take a listing, I'll sit down and there's paperwork called a SPUD, Seller Property Disclosure Statement.
Yep.
So before we get started with anything, I'm going to leave this with you. I'd like you to go through this and to your best ability, fill this out so that the next owner has every bit of opportunity to know what's gone on in this house in the time that you've owned it.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I don't maybe not know everything. I said, do the best that you can, and we'll go from there. And you'd be amazed that once they go through that and then they've step by step, they say, okay, I did that. And at the same time, I'll ask them, well, we need a letter of experience as well, which is basically a report from your insurance agency.
Yeah.
That's going to give us, the 5-year history minimum of the house and insurance claims and that type of stuff. And you're giving them tasks to be a part of it, okay? But then let's say, like on the client that we first met with, we have a house that's just overwhelmingly full of stuff.
Yes.
Okay, then I'm going to talk about, okay, look, in this situation, I've got a friend, Nikki, phenomenal. She's going to come in here. She'll sit down with you, and we'll go through. Now, this client was moving to assisted living, so you were able to say, look, let's go look at where you're moving. Let's find out what fits. And you saw her you helped her transition her life to there.
Yeah.
So I look to my resources and what resource is going to be the best. Yeah. If it's a new buyer, it's going to say, hey, here's my lenders. Let's sit down with one and make sure before we do anything, before we get you keyed up on a home, let's find out exactly where you stand and what you need to do. Yep. So it slows it down and gives them a task. But then you got to stay in contact with them. You got to sit there and you got to support them. Don't push them. Don't overwhelm them.
Yeah.
But you're there to be their advocate. Mm-hmm. And I know on the flip side, when you get into a home, especially somebody who's been in a home forever,
yes,
and you start moving things that's out of their place and they're not used to change.
Yep.
And that's a big thing for all of us to remember with our seniors.
Yeah.
Is the older we get, our world gets smaller.
Yeah.
And when we start over pushing the panic because they're just not processing it the same.
Yeah.
And you deal with it face to face in their personal space.
Yeah.
I deal with it of saying, okay, you haven't done this, or if it's a widow, dealing with the wife who may never have had to be a part of it, because back in those days a lot of the men did it all, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I have had stories upon stories about people who are going through major transitions and they can't find certain paperwork because their husband or their spouse took care of it, right? Mm-hmm. Or they, they have a lack of understanding of the finances because again, their spouse took care of it. So it's, being that support system, especially for elderly folks, I find in our line of where your line of work and mine come in a huge benefit to helping this process along.
Well, and I've heard other your podcasts where you talk about being called a healer.
Yeah.
Well, in some ways we are.
Yeah.
Because in a person in that situation, or really, now maybe somebody who's been in their prime of life and they've sold houses and everything else, they understand the process and maybe they don't feel that way so much.
Sure.
But when you can help a first-time buyer, or somebody who's been through a nasty divorce and had to reinvent their lives, or somebody who's the senior who never really has done it or hasn't made a move in a long time, get into something and they feel what they've accomplished, and you can see that sense of wow, and they look to you and thank you.
Yeah.
That's to answer your question a few minutes ago of what you enjoy the most.
Yes, I would have to agree. I had just got done with the move a couple days ago, and I have to tell you, just the pure relief on my client's face says it all. They gave me a raving review, which is also awesome. Mm-hmm. But just leaving a project, a big moving project like that, knowing that they are set is just the most reward. Like what you said, is just knowing that. And
then when they refer you to somebody else.
Yes. Always love those referrals.
Yes.
So
granted, and it's like I said, I mean, I'm glad that we're having this conversation because yes, I'm in business for real estate. You're in business for organization and stuff, but there's more to it than what a real business is. And if you're only looking at dollars and cents, we obviously have to survive.
Yes.
But if you're helping your clients and you can sit there and pay attention and make a difference for them, that's the real reward versus going to a 9-to-5 job that, and for all those people that think when you're in business for yourself, your schedule's your own. No.
No.
Yeah. I'd like to bring that up to you because what a gut move that is. Now, when we started today, I talked about the speed bumps in our life that tells us we can't do anything. We can't do that, or you're going to fail. You'll never make it work. You have the answer to that.
Well,
you did it.
Yes.
Look where you've been in the year that I've known you.
I know. I moved here. I moved to the Phoenix area. Gosh, I want to say it was summer of 2023. So going on almost 2 years in June. And oh my gosh, I came with no contacts. I had a friend in Mesa. That's it. I didn't know anybody. I came here from New Mexico hoping I knew I've been an organizer out there almost 13 years at that time. And then wanted to kind of do that here, but full time, and then got into moves and stuff. And I don't know, I was determined. And I think when you have a passion for something and a determination, nothing can stop you. I feel mind over matter. You just you just don't think about it. Don't overthink about it, because I feel that's also.
You talk yourself out of it.
Take the
easy road,
Yeah, it's I'll just do something else because I don't have the resources or I don't know the people. But no, it's just you have to put yourself out there. And so that's kind of
as a business owner too.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and okay, I'll give back up and similar to your story.
Yeah.
Doug Hopkins, you've seen him. I'll buy your house, that type of thing.
Sure.
He was my next door neighbor for 17 years.
Oh wow.
I knew him when he had nothing.
Wow.
Determination, never looking back. Same with Kenny Klaus. I knew him when he was still a driver at FedEx.
Yeah.
The determination, the setting of goals, sticking with your beliefs, sticking to a budget, and drive.
Yep.
And you do what it takes. And that's if you want to buy a home. If you want to take a next forward step in your life,
right,
you've got to not maybe go out and spend $10 every morning at Starbucks.
Exactly.
You need to not go and, you can make a hamburger at home for $1.50 and not go spend the $27 by the time you tip for one at the restaurant.
Right. I mean, it's drawing on to those awarenesses of where your money's going, where your time is going, and what's
where your
important
commitments.
to you. And what's important to you? What is those goals that you said earlier? Like, do you have a goal to buy a house? Okay, well, what's preventing you from doing so?
Yeah. That's a great question, because a lot of times it's not what you make.
Yeah.
It's what you're spending before you go get your goals.
Right.
And that's actually what I was hoping to get through in this today when you asked me to come out here.
Yeah.
Is I do my goofy buys. I have my toy car that I need like a hole in the head. But I figured out a way to do it. It didn't affect me owning a home and that type of stuff, but I have it. You've got to do it with goals in mind. You've got to have that goal. You've got to have that goal with your spouse. And, as a new couple, you may not have any kids.
Yeah.
But when that extra set of eyeballs hits and you realize, uh-oh.
Yeah.
You don't want to play catch up. You want to be there.
Yep.
And it doesn't take a lot. It just takes a little discipline.
Yeah. Discipline is key, I think, too. It's like if you have a goal and you're determined to do that, you just have to every day even wake up and just be like, all right, what is my goal? I'm going to be doing this. Okay, how do I get there? And just remind yourself what's important. I know
time is running short here, so real quick.
Okay.
With you, do you have to have that same conversation after you've organized somebody's home to how to keep it that way?
Yes.
What do you tell them?
Well, I try to set it up, first of all, where it's based on the functionality of the client, get to learn their routines, their habits, their day-to-day stuff. And then when I realize, when I start to learn these things about the client, then I'm able to just implement something that I'm like, all right, what I tell people is this. At the end of the day, I leave. I leave the whole project. That's not my home. That's not my stuff. But I like to set it up to where it's most benefiting them because that's their space, right?
So do you kind of point out habits that might have got them into that unorganized zone?
And how do we set it up to where it jolts them out? Almost like, okay, we're no longer doing that because that object or that piece of furniture is no longer in that space. So if you kind of rearrange things and set it up to where it kind of takes them out of their old habits and sets them into a new environment, if you will, then it kind of helps them set more of a manageable, hopefully a more manageable approach.
So do you point out how good they feel when the house is done before you leave?
Heck yeah.
There you go.
Yes. You always have to remind them, okay, how does this feel now?
How's that ice cream
Amazing.
taste? Yes.
And then it's always those check-ins, right? Weeks, months later, hey, how's it going? And then it's people are people. That's the bottom line. Is people are always going to fall into old habits, old patterns, but it's just a matter of reminding them their value, their worth, and their desire to keep it up.
Well, what you're doing with that, too, is you're continuing to bring value to what they already paid you for. And that's something we're preached at our office, and in a good way, is the close of the transaction is not the close of the relationship.
Absolutely.
You stay in touch. We do different things throughout the year. We invite former clients too and everything else to have them involved. And yes, of course we want future business, but it's also for them to feel good that they have a place to go to get the questions that are answered correctly, just like you do. If somebody calls you and says, Nicole, I'm not doing well, help me again. Yep. You're right there. They've already got your trust. You don't lose it by not contacting. I got you.
Trust is huge. I feel like in any type of business relationship you're in, and if you can find trust with your clients and their clients with you, that's bread and butter.
Yeah.
That is icing on the cake.
And as a breadaholic,
I like my bread more in the liquid form, aka beer. Just kidding.
The yeast, huh?
Yeah, right. Well, thank you, Rich, so much for joining me today. How can people find you? I know you said you're here in Mesa.
I'm at the Klaus team. My wife and I also SVE Living, which is Sunland Village East, living.com, which is kind of a real estate page. We're 55 plus community there, but I can be reached through that. Awesome. And you can call me at 480-330-8904. Okay. I don't have a personal website.
That's fine.
I figured that out as we were getting ready for this. I'm like, I probably should do that.
It's okay. Well, I'll put your contact information in the show notes, and if anyone has any questions, I'll make sure. And
by all means, glad to help.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks again for joining Get Tailored Podcast. Again, my name is Nicole Taylor. Please subscribe, share this content with anyone that it resonates with. Have a good one. If you're loving what you've heard today, be sure to hit the subscribe button, give us a like, and share this episode with your friends. We're here to bring you more valuable tips and inspiring stories, and we would love for you to be a part of our journey. Your support means the world to us. Let's keep the conversation going.